In the last tutorial about arrays, we learned how to declare an array, how to use indexes to fetch, assign, and override values of the array. Also, we learned how to use a for loop to iterate through the array and how arrays are passed automatically by reference to functions. Today, let us expand more our knowledge about arrays. So in the last video, we learned how to use the for loop to be able to display the elements of an array. Today, let's go ahead and try to create an array that stores strings. First of all, we need to define a const variable which will act as the size of the array. So I'll say size like this, and let's say this array will only store 2 strings. Next, let's define the type of the string, or the array, which will be a string array, and this array will be a size 2. So this is an array of size 2, and that stores 2 strings because it's of size 2, so 2 elements of type string. Now, if I go ahead and assign some values to this array, I could assign to it string values, like for example, hello and world like this. So like this. And of course, I could use this custom print function that we created to be able to display the elements of the array. But because I'm passing a string array, I need to replace the parameter type with string, like this, okay? And so let me go down here and say print array like this and pass it the size. And now let's go ahead and run our code. As you can see, the elements of the array are being printed next to each other, and these 2 elements are of type string. Now let's go ahead and delete all of this, and I'm going to assign to the variable called size the value of 5. And now let's go ahead and try to create a char array, or an array that stores chars. So it's pretty simple. All we need to do is say char, name the variable, and make sure we mention these square brackets, and give the array its size. So this is an array of size 5 that stores 5 chars, because 5 elements of type chars. Now let me go ahead and assign to it some chars. And so these are 5 chars. So this array can store 5 chars. Again, you can use the print function right here and make sure to pass it a char array to be able to display the elements of this array. And so this array stores 5 chars. But did you know that I could delete all of this, and with a char array I could pass it a string? So instead of passing it char values, I could pass it a simple string like John, like this. And this works completely fine. Now you noticed here that the characters inside John are of total 4. So it will make sense for me to add another character, let's say K for example. Now we're getting an error. It says here that the string, or the array is storing now 6 elements, and it requires to only store 5 elements, or 5 characters. This is only 5 characters, it should be correct. Well, I'll explain this later on, but we need to learn first how this array is able to store a string. Let's go ahead and print this array to understand what's happening. So I'll say array like this and size. Now I'm going to compile and launch my code to be able to know what's happening. And as you can see, each character of this string is being printed separately. Why? Because remember, when you pass a string to a char array, what will happen is that the characters inside the string will be cut down and stored inside this array. That is why right here, when you print the array that stores the string, what will happen is that each character will be printed alone, because eventually all the characters of this string will be stored separately. Okay, so imagine that when you give a char array a string, it will cut this string into pieces, or in our case, into characters. Okay, but this doesn't explain why when I add another character right here, we will get an error. It says that the length now became 6 instead of 5. So let's go ahead and see what's happening. So basically, a char array, automatically the compiler passes it something called a null character. And this is a null character like this, \0. And a null character refers to the end of a string. Now, how does this apply to our case? Let me go ahead and tell you how the name John is being stored inside this array. So basically, this name is being stored like this. So it is cut down into characters. So J, O, H like this, and N. So these are 4 characters. But there's another character which is the null character. It is stored at the end. And this refers to the end of the string. So this right here, John, is a string, and this is the end of the string. Okay? And so this is why we are getting a total of 5. So this array right now stores 5 characters. The characters of the string John as well as the null character. That is why when we add K like this, we are getting an error because the array now stores 6 characters. Like this. Let me show it to you. So it's storing 6 characters, and this right here is a total of 6 characters. That is why this array right now is storing 6 characters. So always remember that a char array will always handle, or excuse me, will always store a null character when you pass it a string, okay? And so why does the null character actually exist? Well, this is a C style string. In the C programming language, you don't have the built-in string type like this that we have in C++. And in the C language, if you want to create a string, you need to do it in the following way and make sure to mention the null character right here for the compiler to know that this is the end of the string. Now, this null character can be used in some condition inside a while loop. Let me explain. So let me go ahead first of all and comment this out, and I'm going to create another print statement that only takes a char array and simply display the elements of this char array. So I'm going to say void print, and it will take a char array like this, and it will take the int or the size of the array like this. Now, first of all, I'll define a initializer variable called I, and it will be set as 0. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say while array index I is different than the null character like this. What I want to do is I will simply want to display the elements. So I'll say array I like this and make sure to add some space next to them, and at the end I'll simply just add a new line. So what's happening here? So at first I is 0 because the first index inside the array is 0. So array index 0 meaning the first element inside our array will be j right here, and so we are comparing if j or while j different than the null character. Well, it is different, so the first line will be printed. And I forgot to actually increment I by 1. So at each iteration, we will increment I by 1, and this is really important. So we need to increment I by 1 at each iteration to be able to move on to the next elements. And eventually, I will become equal to 3. Okay, so what will happen is 0, 1, 2, 3, this element will be printed, then I will be incremented by 1, it will become 4. And array index 4 actually stores here the null character. So, while null character different than null character, this will evaluate false, and we displayed our array using a condition that requires the null character. Let me show it to you. So I'm going to compile first of all and then launch. As you can see, it works properly. So this is how you could use the null character, and this only works with a char array. You cannot do it with an integer array or a array that stores doubles, for example, okay? This only works with a char. Now that we know a bit about arrays, it is time to learn something really common you'll do with arrays, and it is called searching for an element inside an array. Now, searching something inside a data structure is really important to know, and it comes with data structures and algorithms. Now, I know this course isn't about data structures and algorithms in C++, but I will teach you the easiest searching algorithm called linear search, because it is very important for you to know this searching algorithm and how to search inside an array. So a linear search algorithm searches for an element and returns its position. So basically it searches for an element by going through the array or by going through each element inside the array and compares it with the target element. If it finds the target element, it will return the index or the position of this element. Let's go ahead and create a function that will return an integer, and I'll call this function linear search. So basically this linear search at the end will return as an integer, which is the index of the found element. If found, it will return the index, otherwise we will return something else, which we will see right now. So I'm going to first of all give it an array and the size of the array, but something extra right now, which is the target element. So what is the element we are trying to search inside the array? Okay, so now let me go ahead and right now use a for loop. So I'll say for int I equal to 0, this is the initializer variable, and the condition will be I less than size, and I'll increment I by 1. So this is a basic for loop that's iterating inside our array. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an if block or an if statement. I'll say something like array index I, and I'll compare each element of the array with the target value. So if the element of the array is equal to the target value, that means we found the target value. So what I will do is I'll return I'll return I. I is the index of the element. So basically, we found the element. But what if the element doesn't exist? Well, basically, the loop will iterate through the array and will compare the elements with the target value, and at the end, we will not find the target value. So we will exit out of the for loop, and I will simply return, by default, -1, like this. So that means -1 is that the element is not found at any index. And I want you to remember that the return keyword, when it will be executed by the compiler, what it will do is that it will return what it needs to return. In our case, maybe it will return I, maybe it will return -1, but either way, it will return the data it needs to return, and it will completely exit out of the function, okay? So let's go ahead and see this, how this linear search algorithm actually works. So I'll go down here and I'll say something like cout find, for example, 4 at index like this. And I'll call the linear search function like this. I'll pass it array, I'll pass it size, and I'll pass it 4. So we are trying to search for the element 4. Let's go ahead and see what is the index of this element. So this element is found at index 1. But what if I go ahead and give it 40? So this element, or 40, doesn't exist in our array. So as you can see, we got -1 because the element 40 doesn't exist in our array. Alright, this is it about arrays in C++. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date with me in the C++ tutorial series. Other than that, thank you for watching today's video. I invite you to click on one of these end screens that will appear right now, and I hope to see you in the next video.